2022 remote meeting of the Greensboro City Council. I'm going to take a roll call to confirm attendance since there are those watching on TV. Mrs. Hoffman?
Here.
Mr. Holston?
Present.
Dr. Wells, I believe, is on her way. Mayor Pro Tem?
Present.
I am here, present. Ms. Abuzawader?
Present.
Mr. Outling?
Here.
Mrs. Thurm?
Present.
And Mrs. Hightower. And so 8 of us are in attendance. We will begin tonight's meeting with a moment of silence. Thank you. Mrs. Hoffman, would you lead us in the pledge?
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the Katie Dorset Council Chamber. Residents may sign up to speak by 6 o'clock using the QMinder kiosk just outside the chamber door. To comply with requirements by the state in regards to Zoom meetings and to provide an optimum experience for the public, council will verbalize motions and votes will be conducted by roll call and electronically. Each member of council must vote unless there is a direct conflict. Zoning matters do allow for a 15-minute presentation both for and against the rezoning. There is also a 5-minute rebuttal. Following the introduction of each case, if applicable, staff will make a presentation before opening the floor for questions from council members. The mayor will call on speakers in the order in which they are registered, and at the time their lines will be opened. All speakers should identify themselves with their name for the record. All participants must remain muted when others have been identified to speak. The meeting host will mute anyone that speaks out of turn. Once an item has been completed, the meeting host will remove speakers for said item from the Zoom call. Council will make a motion and second to close the public hearing. The floor will be open for council deliberations and discussions. Motions and seconds to move an item should be clearly identified by the raising of hands, recognized by the mayor, and voted on by roll call. The mayor will announce the vote results. The city of Greensboro is committed to promoting an environment that is free of discrimination, bias, and bullying. Thus, harassment, words, jokes, actions, or comments based on an individual's sex, sexual orientation, race, ethnic background, age, religion, physical condition, or other legally protected characteristic will not be tolerated. Written comments may be submitted on our website at www.greensboro-nc.gov. We have a consent agenda for items G1 through G30, which are a grouping of agenda items that are voted on with one single vote to expedite what are believed to be routine and non-controversial items. Any council member may withdraw an item from the consent agenda for the purpose of voting no. Items removed from the consent agenda for discussion will be placed on the June 21st City Council business agenda. Tonight's meeting does include closed captioning. Depending on the length of the meeting, we may take a short recess around 7:30. This is the time for our consent agenda, items G1 through G30. Do we have a motion? Moved by Mr. Holston, seconded by Mrs. Hoffman. Council, please vote. And I will, Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mrs. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower? Yes. That passes 8-0. We are now going to move to the public hearing portion of our agenda. We will take items H1 and H through H3 together. Item H.1 is a public hearing for an ordinance annexing territory into the corporate limits for property located at 5835 City Boulevard, 9.96 acres, Goodwill Industries of North Carolina. And item H.2, public hearing for an ordinance for original zoning for a 5835 Westgate City Boulevard, Chris Gorham for Goodwill Industries of Central North Carolina. And item H3, public hearing for an ordinance for original zoning for portions of Westgate City Boulevard right-of-way, City of Greensboro.
Good evening, council members. I'm Luke Carter with the City of Greensboro Planning Department, and I'll be introducing these items tonight. Before you, you have the zoning map for the subject properties. These items are H1, H2, and H3. This is 5835 Westgate City Boulevard and a portion of Westgate City Boulevard. This is a zoning map showing that the subject property contains a total of 9.96 acres and are located southwest of Westgate City Boulevard and north of Queen Alice Road. The requests include an annexation and original zoning from County LB, which is limited business, County conditional zoning highway business, Jamestown civic, and Jamestown industrial, to city conditional district commercial medium and commercial medium. North of the requests is zoned county conditional zoning highway business and county limited business. East and south of the requests are zoned county RS 40, and west of the request is zoned Jamestown civic and Jamestown industrial.
Move item 1 on the annexation.
We do have one speaker signed up, but
please.
she is in favor. Ms. McMurdo?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Did you want to make a comment?
No, I was going to present on behalf of Chris Gorham and Goodwill Industries.
Move H1.
Okay, so we do have a motion and a second motion by Mrs. Johnson, a second from Mrs. Boozawaiter.
They need to read the conditions into the.
That's okay.
Could I just hear what it's gonna be?
The request is for conditional district commercial medium. The applicant is representing Goodwill Industries, but that's not the only use that would be permitted at this location. They have submitted a fairly lengthy zoning use condition that limits a lot of uses in the commercial medium zoning district, but anything that's not specifically conditioned out would also be permitted at this location.
So are there conditions to read, or they just attached to the original condition?
I can read that condition if you would like. Okay. The applicant is requesting one condition with this request, and that would be that permitted uses include all uses allowed in the commercial medium zoning district except cemeteries, wireless telecommunication facilities, clubs and lodges, shooting ranges, amusement and water parks and fairgrounds, campgrounds and recreational vehicle parks, hotels and motels, tourist homes, which are also known as bed and breakfast, eating and drinking establishments without drive-through facilities, eating and drinking establishments with drive-through facilities, bars, nightclubs and brew pubs, funeral homes and crematoriums, taxi dispatch terminals, taxidermists, retail sales and service with drive-through facilities, advertising services, which are outdoor, convenience store with fuel pumps, sexually oriented businesses, all vehicle sales and service, caretaker dwellings, which is an accessory use, junk motor vehicles, which is also an accessory use, satellite dishes, TV and radio antenna towers as an accessory use, and land clearing and inert debris landfills minor, which is a temporary use. And I can read the recommendation by staff as well. The GSO 2040 comprehensive plan designates these properties as urban general within an urban mixed use corridor on the future built form map, and commercial and residential on the future land use map, with the majority of the property being commercial. The proposed original zoning request supports the comprehensive plan's growing economic competitiveness big idea to build a prosperous, resilient economy that creates equitable opportunities to succeed, and the comprehensive plans prioritizing sustainability goal to build economic resilience, expanding local economies' ability to withstand and adjust to disruptions and changes in at the regional, national, and global scales. And the proposed CDCM, and CM zoning districts permit a variety of commercial, retail, and office uses that are compatible with existing uses in the surrounding area. Staff recommended approval of this request, and at the April 18th, the Planning and Zoning Commission, on a vote of 8-0, also recommended approval of this request. With that, I can answer any other questions that you have.
Oh,
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry.
Sharon, through?
I mean, I just wanted to hear the limited uses, so I assume it's just gonna be like a typical Goodwill. We have in another location, similar.
Yes, ma'am. And there's also room on the property for another use if they decide to do that in the future.
But another use would not be the uses that we just heard.
That's right.
There's a lot of uses I heard that I don't want to see.
Yes, ma'am.
So, thank you.
I just wanted to double check. Should we not have accepted the conditions, Mr. City Attorney, or do we do that?
That's not a new condition.
It's not a new condition. That is
was
a
submitted
condition.
with the application. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So I guess at first I need a motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
Okay, that was moved by Mrs. Thurm, seconded by Mr. Boozawader. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. We do have a motion on H.1 by Mrs. Johnson, seconded by Mrs. Boozawader. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mrs. Boozawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
That passes 8-0. Item number H.2 will require a statement of consistency.
Move the item.
Moved by Mrs. Thurm, seconded by Mrs. Hightower.
The Greensboro City Council believes that its action to approve the zoning request for the property described as 5835 Westgate City Boulevard from County LB and County CZHB to City CDCM to be consistent with the adopted GSO 2040 comprehensive plan and considers the action to be reasonable and in the public interest for the following reasons. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan's future built form map and future land use map. The proposed city CDCM zoning district as conditioned permits uses which fit the context of surrounding area and limits negative impacts on the adjacent properties. The request is reasonable due to the size, physical conditions, and other attributes of the area. It will benefit the property owner and surrounding community, and approvals in the public interest.
Okay, council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Mayor Pro
Yes.
Tem? I'm a yes. Mrs. Boozawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
That passes 8-0. Item H.3 also requires a statement of consistency. Moved by Mr. Holston, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem. Mr. Holston?
Yes. The Greensboro City Council believes that its action to recommend approval of the zoning request for the property described as a portion of Westgate City Boulevard right-of-way from County CZHB, conditional zoning highway business, Jamestown CIV Civic, and Jamestown IND Industrial to City CM Commercial Medium to be consistent with the adopted GSO 2040 comprehensive plan and considers the action taken to be reasonable and the public reason in the public interest for the following reasons. One, the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan's future built format and future land use map. Two, the proposed city CM zoning district permits uses which fit the context of surrounding area. And three, the request is reasonable due to the size, physical conditions, and other attributes of the area. It will benefit the property owner and surrounding community, and approval is in the public interest.
Thank you. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Mayor Pro
Yes.
Tem? I'm a yes. Mrs. Boozawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
That passes 8-0. We will take items H4 and H5 together. H4 is a public hearing for an ordinance annexing territory into the corporate limits for property located at 5026 Burlington Road, 9.466 acres, estate of Elizabeth Ann Norris. And item H5, public hearing for an ordinance for original zoning for 5026 Burlington Road, Ty Chapman on behalf of the estate of Elizabeth Ann Norris. We do have one speaker who is in favor and available for questions. Mr. Carter?
Yes, ma'am. Also in with this item is H5. Just wanted to make sure that was read in as well. That's an original zoning from county HI to city LI. That's for 5026 Burlington Road. This is the zoning map of the subject property, which contains approximately 9.466 acres and is located south of Burlington Road and west of Mount Hope Church Road. This request is for an annexation of original zoning from county HI to city LI. North of the request is zoned county shopping center, county highway business, and county residential single family 30,000 square foot lots. East of the request is zoned city R3. South of the request is county ag. West of the request is zoned city CDLI and county CZLI. This is the aerial map of the subject property and currently contains an industrial use. North of the request contains single-family dwellings and undeveloped land. East of the request contains a religious assembly use. South of the request contains single-family dwellings and agricultural land, and west of the request contains mobile office sales use. The future land use map of the 2040 comprehensive plan designates the property as industrial and residential. And the future built form map of the GSO 2040 comprehensive plan designates the property as industrial and urban general.
Move H4.
Okay, that is moved by Mrs. Johnson, seconded by Ms. Abuzawader. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Holston,
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ms. Abuzawader.
Yes.
Mr. Outling.
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm
Yes.
and Mrs. Hightower.
Yeah, so this is gonna be another, just a light industrial use.
Yes, ma'am.
That's what they're planning, a warehouse logistics space.
The applicant can speak to the specific use, but it's coming into the city as a light industrial zoning. In the county, it was a heavy industrial zoning.
Right,
Yeah.
move from heavy to light.
Yes, ma'am.
But there's nothing else light in the area? Other than, because you said houses and shopping center.
You'll notice the property to the immediate west of the property, of the subject property, is also conditional district light industrial. And that's the mobile office unit sales center at that location. Yes, ma'am.
And Mrs. Hightower, you were a yes?
Oh, yeah.
And so that passes 8-0. Item H.5 requires a statement of consistency.
Second.
Sharon, did you move that?
Yeah.
Moved by Mrs. Hightower, seconded by Mrs. Johnson.
Greensboro City Council believes that this action to approve the zoning request for the property described as 5026 Burlington Road from County HI Heavy Industrial to City LI, City Light Industrial, to be consistent with the adopted GSO 2040 Comprehensive Plan and considers the action taken to be reasonable in the public interest for the following reasons. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan, future built form map, and the future use map. The proposed CDLI zoning district as condition limits negative impacts on the adjacent properties and permits uses which allow the content of surrounding area. That the request is reasonable due to the size, physical conditions, and other attributes of the area. It will benefit the property owner and surrounding community, and approval is in the public interest.
So council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mrs. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Sturm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And that passes 8-0. We will take H6 and H7 together. H6 is a public hearing for an ordinance annexing territory into the corporate limits for property located at 3607 Easterwood Road, 1 acre daily management LLC. And item H.7, public hearing for an ordinance for original zoning for 4717 to 4733 and 4735 US Highway 29 North and 3605, 3607 Easterwood Road. Mark Isaacson and Amanda Hodiern for Daily Management LLC. Ms. Hodiern is on the phone if we have questions. Mr. Carter?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. This is the zoning map of the subject properties, which contain approximately 23.82 acres. And the requests include an annexation, an original zoning, and a rezoning from County RS 30, City LI, and City R3 to City CDRM 18. North of the request is Zone City PI and City R3. East of the request is Zone City CDCM and County RS 30. South of the request is City CM, City LI, and City R3. West of the request is Zone City R3. This is the aerial map of the subject property, which shows that a portion of it is undeveloped. There's also a wireless telecommunication facility at this location. There is chemical storage, and there's a recent equipment sales and service facility that was demolished. North of the request contains a research park, a single-family dwelling, and undeveloped land. East of the request contains a manufacturing use, a truck stop, religious assembly use, and south of the request contains an NCDOT office use, manufacturing use, and single-family residential. West of the request contains the single-family dwellings and undeveloped land. The future land use map of the 2040 comprehensive plan designates the property as industrial and residential. And the future built form map of the comprehensive plan designates the property as industrial and urban general. This is the zoning condition that was proposed by the applicant. And I can read staff's recommendation. As stated earlier, the comprehensive plan designates the majority of the site as planned industrial with the remainder as urban general on the future built form map. And it is also designated as industrial and residential on the future land use map. And the proposed original zoning and rezoning request supports the comprehensive plan's Creating Great Places goal to expand Greensboro's citywide network of unique neighborhoods, offering residents of all walks of life a variety of quality housing choices, and the Building Community Connections goal to maintain stable, attractive, and healthy places to live and raise families. The proposed CDRM 18 zoning district as conditioned allows moderate intensity residential uses that support nearby industrial uses and are also compatible with the various nearby residential uses. Care should be taken with respect to building orientation, building materials, building height, and visual barriers to ensure an appropriate transition to adjacent and nearby lower density residential uses. At the April 18th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, they recommended approval of the annexation and of the original zoning request and rezoning request with no opposition. And I can answer any questions that you have at this time.
Tammy?
No, you did. and
Okay.
I'm next.
Just out of curiosity, I know that recently we had a rezoning on 29 and there were questions regarding access to 29 and the cut through to 29. Because this already has a cut through, will they be able to maintain that, or an entrance onto 29? Will they be able to maintain that? Or will they use that Easterwood side route?
Councilwoman Thurman, I'm happy to address that during my comments. This is Amanda Hoodier, or I don't know if your question was for staff at this time.
I think we have some breakthrough noise on the Zoom call. If you could. Okay, I don't. Yeah, couldn't understand. I couldn't understand it anyway.
Are you able to hear me, Madam Mayor?
Our technical difficulties have been resolved. Good evening, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to answer the question.
Tammy, you had a question, didn't you?
Yes, so the existing connection to US 29 can be maintained until such time NCDOT closes it to convert US 29 to interstate standard.
And then at that time, where will access for this property be?
So the remainder of the access will need to be through other surface streets that connect to this site. The transportation analysis that was done in conjunction with the rezoning request considered those future alternatives.
Okay, thank you.
So when you were reading and I heard some things that said, it talked about possible building materials and things of that nature and the type of building it could be. What is that for?
They are requesting a residential multifamily 18 zoning district with one condition. It just says permitted uses shall be limited to all uses permitted in the RM 18 zoning district except land clearing and inert debris, landfills minor, which is an accessory use. On here, there are no conditions that would limit the facade architecture.
So nothing of building material, types of material, masonry, none of that.
No, ma'am.
No buffer requirements, none of that.
Buffer requirements are,
Just the standard.
that's a
ones.
general standard of the
Right.
ordinance, yes.
But
ma'am.
nothing extra. I guess I'm a little concerned about what I heard when you were reading some of those things. Because there's industrial use out there. It sounds like that houses can be next to that. You say it's compatible to that, to allow for that?
In general, the residential multifamily, the conditional district request that they are requesting, the use is compatible with existing uses in the surrounding area. There is nearby industrial, but there's also a fair amount of residential adjacent to the site and in the general area.
So no protection from the residential to the industrial, all just kind of flows into one? I was trying to see on the map.
So this is the aerial photo of the subject property. You can see as Esterwood Road is to the south. Those properties that are on the north side of Esterwood Road, those are all single family dwellings currently. And then to the north is a research park, and they're heavily wooded. The other industrial use is to the northwest. It's not directly adjacent to the site.
Is that the other piece of Gateway Research Park out there?
Gateway Research Park is shown as the PI, the green zoning there.
You mentioned that there was chemical storage on this property.
Yes, ma'am.
What kind of storage is it in? Do you know?
There is a large tank, above ground tank.
Dangerous chemicals or what? I mean, most chemicals are dangerous.
I'm sorry, I don't know the specific chemical that's on the site.
Could the attorney answer, is this a secure storage of these chemicals?
I don't have any information about it either, but I'm aware that it will have to be inspected by the fire department.
Say what?
It will have to be inspected by the fire department.
But it would be inspected, would it not? Okay, well, it's probably okay. I just want to make sure it's near my house.
All right. That's important. But if it is a storage tank, I mean, if it's got stuff in it.
Once it's inspected, if it's got good seal and all of that, I'm fine.
The applicant
I
may be able
trust
to
that
provide
that's the way
additional
it is.
information on that.
Hmm.
The applicant may be able to provide additional information.
Well,
on
I thought
current
Amanda was
uses.
on the phone somewhere. What happened to you?
I'm here, Ms.
that a question
Hightower.
you
When
need
the
answered?
council is ready for the applicant's comments, I'm happy to address these items. Thank you.
I didn't hear a word.
I'm sorry, your volume is very muffled.
Is it safe?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, this is Amanda Hodiern here tonight for the applicant Daily Management LLC. Are you all able to hear me now?
Did you say it was safe? Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am. As
Okay,
part of the
thank you so
applicant,
much.
yes, we would be forced to follow all the proper regulations for that, and of course would want to for our future residents on the site, and we would adhere to all protocols to make sure that was safe. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there? Moved by Ms. Abuzawader. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Holston. Council, please vote. There seems to be some interference on the audio. In the meantime, Mrs. Hoffman, Mr. Holston,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'm a yes. Ms. Abuzawader? Yes. Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
Mrs. Hightower?
No, I'm not comfortable with a tank on the property, putting houses on it. I'd like to have a whole lot more information than I heard.
I'm thinking it's gonna be a distance from that though. But anyway,
So that passes 7-1,
move H7.
and that will require a statement of consistency. Moved by Mrs. Johnson, seconded by Ms. Abuzawader. Council, please vote.
Hello, you want me to read this?
Oh, yeah, I do. Thank you.
The Greensboro City Council believes that this action to approve the zoning request for the property described at 4717 through 4733 and 4735 US Highway 29 North and 3605 through 3607. I think this is Esterwood Road.
It is.
From County RS 30 Residential Single Family, the City Light Industrial, and City R3 Residential Single Family
So, excuse me. So what's up on the screen, item H10,
It's not-
varies a little bit from what I just read. Do I need to read what's in the screen into the record?
You want H9, you want H8 and 9.
I read the item.
You
I think he
jumped
read
in.
the
Right.
item, but H9 and H10 are connected.
Okay. Yeah, okay, I'm
H8
sorry. Go
and
ahead.
H9 include H10. as
Yeah,
well,
so H,
because
we haven't gotten to H10 yet,
No, we haven't.
Okay.
You jumped.
but that's what's up on the screen.
We'll consider them together.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So then let me go ahead and public hearing for an original zoning from county CZ PDM, conditional zoning plan development mix, county AG agricultural and county RS 40 residential single family to city CM commercial medium for the properties identified of portions as Leeburn Road and NC 68 right of way generally described as west of NC 68 and south of Leeburn Road, 6.64 acres. So we're taking 8, 9, and 10 together.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have two speakers.
This is the zoning map of the subject property. This should also include the area within the right of way for Leeburn from this point around to NC 68 at that point there. The subject property contains approximately 40.81 acres and is located west of NC 68 and south of Leeburn Road. The requests include an annexation, an original zoning, and a rezoning request from County CZ PDM, County Ag, County RS 40, and City CDCM to City PUD and City CM for the area within the right of way for NC 68. North of the request is zoned County RS 40, City PI, and City PUD. East of the request is zoned City PUD and City CDCM. South of the request is zoned City CDLI. West of the request is zoned County Ag. This is an aerial map of the subject property, which shows that subject properties currently contain or are undeveloped land and the roadway for NC 68. North of the request contains a college, single-family dwelling, and multifamily residences. East of the request contains multifamily dwellings and a convenience store with fuel pumps. South of the request contains a warehouse use, and west of the request contains an agricultural use and single-family dwellings. Future land use map designates this property as commercial mixed use in support of the Campus Village planning area as designated in the Western Area Plan. The future built form map designates the property as urban general. This is the condition that was proposed by the applicant. Staff recommends approval of the request with the following statements. That the comprehensive plan designates this property as urban general within the neighborhood and district scale activity center and urban mixed use corridor on the future built form map and commercial mixed use in support of the Campus Village planning area on the future land use map of the Western Area Plan. The requests support both the comprehensive plan's economic development goal to build a prosperous, resilient economy that creates equitable opportunities to succeed and the building community connections goal to maintain stable, attractive, and healthy places to live and raise families. The proposed plan unit development zoning designation, as conditioned, will allow a mix of uses that are generally similar to the existing uses on site and the surrounding area. Care should be given to orient the development to limit potential negative impacts such as noise, traffic, and light trespass on nearby residential uses. At the April 18th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval by a vote of 8-0 for the annexation and original zoning and rezoning requests. With that, and there was no opposition present at the meeting. There were comments submitted beforehand, though. And I can answer any questions that you have at this time.
We do have some speakers on the phone. Nick Legori, if there are any questions from council on item H10, we do have one in favor and one opposed.
Good evening. Madam Mayor, members of council, Nathan Duggins here on behalf of the applicant Greenleaf 68. I think John Collett may be on the phone, but if he's not, I'm here to answer any questions. Nick Lagoria is our traffic engineer who worked with us and has been working on this site. Y'all may know this site as the Sheet site on 68. It's been rezoned in the last 24 months. I think the Sheets is operational now. I went by there recently and it was operational. This is just south of the GTCC airport site, obviously very close to the airport. Is going to be a multifamily development site, perfect for hopefully a number of boom employees. Is in the 68 corridor. We think it's a great multi-use site, about up to maybe 50,000 square feet of retail that'll run along the 68 corridor, maybe some office, medical. Mr. Lyons is here tonight. We became fast friends this afternoon. He had a number of concerns. I'm gonna let him express those about the traffic on Leaborn, particularly as it connects back into Curd Road and as it comes into Pleasant Ridge Road. But I'll let him speak, and then I've got Nick with us, Liguori, who's our traffic engineer, and of course I can answer any questions as well.
Thank you.
Yes, my name is Joseph Lyon. I live at 4005 Lion Creek Lane, and I've lived out there for 60 years. Seen a lot of changes. You know, I wrote a letter. Did y'all get the letter? Okay. Kind of explains a little bit about how it used to be, how it is now, which have no problem with change. I mean, change is good. And I know we need change. We need more, you know, residential areas. The problem that I have is when the FedEx hub over in Colfax was put in, and the Amazon, all of the Amazon facilities, and a couple of new tractor trailer terminals. I think it's Old Dominion and Averett Express. And then of course the pipe plant that's in Colfax. And I know that's a good ways away from where we're talking about. But the problem is that I have noticed, and I live there, I built a house for my daughter right down the corner from Coode Road and Leaborn. Coode and Leaborn connect together there. The name changes. And then you've got Ballard Road. And these tractor trailers are, a lot of them are dual tractor trailers that come from FedEx. And when they come on those roads were originally gravel roads. I learned to drive on those roads. So I know. And they weren't regraded. They weren't realigned. And there is some hilly terrain. You know, you got some of them that have curves that are on hills. And the problem is when you're meeting one of those tractor trailers on those curved roads, if you're not careful, I mean, both of you can't stay on the pavement. One has to give. And usually it's the car. You know, I've had to do that 2 or 3 times. And then one intersection there, when you pull up to the stop sign, if one of those tractor trailers are coming and have to turning, then you have to back up to allow that tractor trailer to turn. And what these truck drivers are doing is they're using these back roads, these country roads, for a cut through from 73 back over to Colfax. So they can not have to go through all of the stoplights that are along 68 Pleasant Ridge Road and down Market Street. So my objection to it is that something be done about the tractor trailer traffic on the roads. I mean, that's basically it. Were you able to have that map, you know, the Google map? If I could, I'd like to show you, you know, the reason for that. You'll have to help me. Okay, okay, that's the sheets. How can I, okay. All right, now, if you can see, I've got the little pointer there. You see, if you go down Leaborn Road, okay, coming off of 68, you go down Leaborn Road, there's a creek there. You see Piedmont Saddle Club? Yep. I live right across the road from that, right, you know, right across the road beside the creek on Lion Creek Lane. What these people are doing is they're bringing, and I know they're professional drivers, and I'm not saying anything about that, but the problem is along Leaborn, which turns into Coode, and you come on down, let's see, you see Ballard Road right there? That's the intersection where it's very difficult to maneuver a tractor trailer to turn there. If somebody is sitting at the stop sign and a tractor trailer is turning, the car has to back up or the vehicle has to back up. And what they do is they come down there, they go down Ballard Road and they go all the way over to Ballard. And then they come across to Bunker Hill. And then they go down Bunker Hill and they come all the way down to Colfax. And then from there, they go down this way. The pipe plant is there. I've seen a lot of the tractor trailers loaded with pipes there. And then the Amazon, there's 2 Amazon facilities there, and then the FedEx ground. And then, of course, over here, you have the Old Dominion Freight Line, and then you have the Everett Express. So all of these businesses are growing, and they're building more facilities. There's 2 or 3 other manufacturing plants there. Then what they're doing, instead of going and going down Market Street and coming all the way to 40, you see they have to go all the way around. That's the way these tractor trailers should go. A lot of them go down Pleasant Ridge Road, which that road is not really designed for it either. The problem is on these little roads here, you have a lot of driveway entrances, small housing developments. You have buses, school buses. You have young drivers. I've got 4 grandkids now that are driving. I've got 10 grandkids that live right in off of those roads there within about a couple of miles of me. So that's my concern. And, you know, I just wish that maybe you could consider that, not necessarily stopping the development, but maybe pausing for a little bit until we can figure out whether or not the DOT can restrict the use of tractor trailers on those roads. So that's my request to the council. Okay, thank you.
Any questions? Mrs. Thurm?
No, that's all right. I was going to actually ask Ms. Cockburn. This sounds very similar to something we worked on Hibbler and Allo roads in terms of tractor trailers. And I'm wondering if you have any input on what we might do that could address that challenge.
Thank you for that question. And I can empathize because that is very frustrating on some of these more rural streets. All of these are NCDOT routes. So we would need to work directly with Division 7 staff to take a look at the concern and identify if these can be signed as no trucks allowed.
That's what we need to do.
Excuse me, it's allergies, I promise. But we'd be happy to raise that concern up with our partners at Division 7 and look into that further.
Yes, one other problem with the roads, because they were tar and gravel. They started out as gravel roads, and then back then, you know, back in the day, they would come in and they would put tar down, then put fine gravel, you know, and that's how those roads were built. So the problem is when the tractor trailers come around some of those curves, they run off the edge. So it just continuously keeps breaking. And I've had in front of my house, I think 3 accidents that people have run off the edge of the road and dipped down and then, you know, wound up wrecking. So my fear is that there'll be an accident and hopefully it won't be one of my grandkids. So, you know, that's kind of the way I see it. So anybody got any more questions for me? I'm new to this, so.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Duggins?
Let me just address Mrs. Thurm's comments. We are working with NCDOT, and I don't know if Nick can jump on, and I think Mr. Collett was trying to get on, but he couldn't quite. Did he get on? Okay, great.
Yeah, he did.
One of the things in working with NCDOT, and I don't have the map up, but I think I can quickly explain it. There's going to be a connector road between Leaborn and Greenborn. And so that connector road will take you north into Leaborn. There'll be a restricted left out. So there can't be any truck traffic coming through the development. And DOT is very familiar with this site. We've been working on this site, I think, almost 9 years, because you remember 73 drops into the entrance of this site. So we feel very confident that DOT, NCDOT, and GDOT are going to work together to make this site very safe.
I hope so, because that would be a perfect answer for this.
Absolutely.
So Hannah, do you know, are they gonna pave that road that the gentleman was talking about? I mean, are you talking to DOT? Mr. Douglas, have you talked to him too?
Yeah, I don't know if that road is in the STIP or not. I know there's talk, there is actually on long-term plans to continue Greenborn down to Pleasant Ridge Road, which will take some more of that traffic off of that, I called it Curd. I think it's Cood Road. But I think there are some long-term plans to try to solve for some traffic challenges out there. And Mr. Lyon is right. There is a lot of development to the south and to the west of this site.
Another strategy the division uses to improve existing streets is to regrade them and reconstruct them as they do resurfacing projects. So that may be an option here too, particularly if, as was alluded to, the condition of the road continues to deteriorate because of the truck traffic that was really not what the road was designed to carry.
Any other questions? Thank you.
So there is a 5-minute rebuttal. Mr. Lyons, if there was anything lastly that you wanted to say.
Yes, I really don't want to have a rebuttal about it. It's just, I suppose, that, you know, it's just the big concern about the safety and the speed limit. I mean, this is still country. I mean, this is still very rural area. And we do have some people that really like to go fast on that road. And even though he did say that coming out from behind the sheets, the way a Greenborn, I think is what it's called, they're going to connect over to Leoborn with another road. And they are going to limit the traffic that comes from the warehouse areas to Leoborn so they can't turn left. But there's still nothing to restrict the vehicles that are coming towards 68 that can turn right. And that would be convenient for me, because if I want to come out of my driveway and go up there and turn right, I can be right at Sheets, you know, so but everybody else is going to have that same option. So there'll be a lot, like you said, there's apartments that are being built that are already built on Pleasant Ridge Road at the end of Cood. There's a new apartment complex being built on Pleasant Ridge Road that goes right into where Cood is. And human nature is just going to say to you, because I think there's going to be some restaurants that are going to be built up there along 68 where the college is. So instead of going up Pleasant Ridge and having to maneuver through all the stoplights, they're just going to zip right down the road and get back over there to it without having to go through the stoplights. And they can turn right and come into Sheets and get into that area. So those are the biggest concerns. But like I said, I don't want to stop, you know, progress. We need more. I'm a building contractor. I've been doing it for 40 years. So I know the need, you know, and there's a lot of need right now, and especially with boom coming in and all of the other things that are happening around the airport. So it'll be good to see the development, but the quality of life on that road is just suffering a little bit now because of the way the traffic is. So if that can be addressed, you know, I'm good with it, but I don't know whether y'all need to put a hold on it or how you need to handle it. So that's up to what you want to do. So I appreciate it.
Yes, Mr. Lyons, I just wanted to assure you, several of us are on the MPO TAC.
Yeah.
And I'm actually chair. So we are always concerned about public safety and making sure that our residents can go from one place to another and be safe. And we work great with GDOT and NCDOT. So I just want to assure you that these are some good people who will certainly try to address your concerns, because, you know, especially what caught me, raised my interest in it was when you were talking about the tractor trailers, you know, they're starting to eat up the side of the roads. And I've seen that happen.
Oh, yeah.
And that is a major concern. So I just want to assure you that I do know that everyone will be professional about it and will do everything they can to try to make it safe.
I appreciate that. And, you know, it's just for experienced drivers, when you meet, you know, a big tractor trailer on a country road at night, you know, you can handle it a little bit better. But when you're 16 years old and you just got your driver's license and you overreact and the edge of the road has a dip in it and it's crumbled and your tire goes off the road and you try to jerk it back, you know.
Right.
I've seen it all. So
Right.
that's just the biggest concern. Plus, those roads are not level. I mean, when you look on the map, you don't really see the hills. So they're curved and there's hills and they're not really pitched or graded to allow for, you know, like higher speed traffic would be. So that's just the concern. Okay. All right. Thank you.
So I have one more question, I guess, Mayor Kate. Is there a temporary solution to this, maybe to divert construction traffic, a different route or something? I'm scared of tractor trailers too, so when you said that, you know, but.
Is your microphone on?
Yeah. You want me to talk loud? I was trying to be nice and polite. Gee, you can't be nice and polite. See how to go. Is there a temporary solution?
What I can say is we will reach out tomorrow to NCDOT to discuss what may be possible. Again, these are NCDOT controlled routes. So we will need to partner with them to make any improvements to the situation.
Yeah, that would be nice if you could find out something and maybe reconnect with Mr. Lyons, of course, Mr. Duggins too, but just
I've received his contact information today.
great. Thank you.
Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So-
Moved by Mrs. Boozwaiter, seconded by Mrs. Sturm. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Second.
So moved by Mrs. Boozwaiter, seconded by Mrs. Johnson. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
I am a yes. Mr. Boozwaiter?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Sturm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
That passes 8-0. We need a motion on H9, which requires a statement of consistency. Moved by Mr. Boozwaiter, seconded by Mr. Holston. Boozwaiter?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Greensboro City Council believes that its action to approve the zoning request for the property described as 1691 Greenburn Drive from County CZ PDM, conditional zoning, planned unit development mixed, County AG agricultural, and City CDCM conditional district, commercial medium to City PUD, planned unit development, to be consistent with the adopted GSO 2040 comprehensive plan and considers the action taken to be reasonable and in the public interest for the following reasons. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan's future built form map and future land use map. The proposed city PUD zoning district as condition permits uses which fit the context of surrounding areas and limits negative impacts on the adjacent properties. The request is reasonable due to the size, physical conditions, and other attributes of the area. It will benefit the property owner and surrounding community, and approval is in the public interest.
Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mrs. Boozwaiter?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And that passes 8-0. Before we move on to item H10, I do want to say that I will support this item. And I hope that in the manager's budget, one thing that we've been told by public safety is that as we annex and get further out, we have to make sure that they've got the resources to be able to service those areas, especially, when we look at fire and our certification. So I hope that that will be reflected in the budget as we move on. We know that we're going to have to continue to grow, but we've got to do it responsibly. And I know that all of us will speak to NCDOT to see what we can do to accelerate that. I sit on the TAC along with Mrs. Thurm, and so that is.
And
something-
me.
And Mrs. Johnson.
And Mayor Pro Tem.
That's right.
And- Well, you already said you chaired it. So, yeah. So, and we will make sure that that message gets there. So,
Madam
Yes, Mrs. Stern?
Just a side point, as well as the fire concern and being able to service in that way. We've had a tremendous amount of growth in this quadrant, this upper 68 airport area. And I'm hoping that we'll also see, our field ops team grow accordingly to cover that, because I know that some of those departments are more than stressed now. And as we keep adding developments and roads and projects up that way, there's only so much we can ask in terms of spreading thin. And that's just another piece that I think we need to make sure we're covering in the upcoming budget. Thank you.
So we will hear from the budget tonight, correct?
Yeah, that's our
Okay.
next
So
item.
I presume.
And
that-
then we've got a work session on Thursday.
Okay, and so there will be asked that we will also make of this budget as well.
Well, let's vote on this item first. So,
Yeah, because, yeah.
so H10, do we have a motion?
Move the item.
Moved by Mrs. Stern, seconded by Ms. Abuzawader. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman?
Do I have to read this first?
Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mrs. Abuzawader? Yes. Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Stern?
Yes, but do I need to read this?
Oh, yes, you do. Thank you.
The Greensboro City Council believes that its action to approve the zoning request for the property described as a portion of Leaborn Road and North Carolina Highway 68 right-of-way from County CZ PDM Conditional Zoning Plan Unit Development Mixed, County AG Agriculture on County RS 40 Residential Single Family to City CM Commercial Medium to be consistent with the adopted GSO 2040 Comprehensive Plan, and considers the action taken to be reasonable and in the public interest for the following reasons. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan's future built form map and future land use map. The proposed city CM zoning district permits uses which fit the context of surrounding area. And the request is reasonable due to the size, physical conditions, and other attributes of the area. It will benefit the property owner and surrounding community, and approval is in the public interest. And I'll vote yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
So that passes 8-0. Thank you. We will now move on to the general business portion of our agenda. And item I.1 is a resolution directing the filing with the city clerk of the budget estimate for fiscal year 2022, 2023. Mr. City Manager? And just as a reminder, we do have a work session here in the council chambers on Thursday.
I thought it was Zoom.
No, it's in
It's
person.
person? Okay,
Yes.
that's fine with me.
And let's hold our questions until after his presentation.
Well, good evening. Thank you so much, Mayor and Council Member. I think you already read into my budget by some of your comments earlier, but I do understand that. And as a team, we've worked together to reflect some of our aspirations and some of the comments that I've had from you. But once again, good evening. I'm glad to present to you this evening our recommended budget for FY 22 to 23. This is my first recommended budget to you as a city manager. And I want to start by actually thanking our budget director, John Decker, and his team, who have worked tirelessly over the last several weeks, and especially this past weekend. I dragged them into a meeting last night on getting us here. They've worked so hard to provide us with a budget that meets the provisions of the North Carolina Government Budget and Fiscal Control Act and the policies of the North Carolina Local Government Commission, the LGC. The recommended FY 22-23 budget fulfills my obligation to present a balanced fiscal plan for your consideration this evening. So I want to thank you for embracing me since I joined us 4 months ago. And I also want to thank our wonderful staff and the residents of the city for their collaborative spirit. It's very refreshing, especially as we gradually emerge from the effects of the pandemic. So once again, thank you. So we have happily themed this budget building on our growth momentum for obvious reasons. In the past several months, starting with last year, 2021 especially, we've had unprecedented growth and development. Not only did we had 1 square mile, and that hardly happens to cities, but not only did we had 1 square mile to our geographic area last year, we also attract new businesses while expanding our support of local businesses. So I'm going to pause here and I'm going to play this video for you. Thank you. So as you can see, we untapped our potential. If I had no time at all, started in 2021 through 2022, we untapped our potential as a city, and we want to continue that momentum beginning with this budget. So we also understand, of course, prior to my arrival, that you adopted some strategic priorities. The FY 2022-23 budget aligns with your strategic priorities, which really address 6 key areas: workforce and economic development, provision of affordable housing or diverse price points, especially for those who are in need, 60% area median income or below. Public safety with the goal of reducing violent crimes, maintaining fiscal responsibility, achieving the ease of mobility, but also with the adequate infrastructure to do so while achieving environmental quality and sustainability. So the budget that we recommend to you tonight embraces, obviously recognizes these priorities as a key to moving our city forward in a substantial manner. But also in the last 4 months since I've joined us, through my interactions with you, the public, our staff, and key stakeholders, also through community surveys, I've had so many specific things that are in alignment with your adopted priorities, but more so things that we should align our spending priorities with to put our city in a stronger position to compete successfully for businesses locally, regionally, and nationally, perhaps even internationally. We have seen increased investment in our city in terms of jobs creation, building permits, and value of construction. And I'll share with you something quickly from 2021 alone. We had about 4,700 building permits issued in 2021, and the value of construction was $817 million. That's the highest it was in the past 10 years. This budget builds on this economic development momentum and other key priorities. And as we grow, the need for affordable housing and the means of connecting people to jobs and homes have never been more important. In the past decade, we grew by 30,000 people. With that population increase comes the responsibility to equip our public safety officers and first responders to be able to meet our growing needs. Investing in means of mobility, multimodal mobility, and supporting infrastructure is critical to maintaining a competitive edge, while we have to demonstrate equity in how we involve our local minority and women-owned businesses. So on the screen there, you'll notice that we are focusing our budget in 6 key areas, starting with first responders, making sure that affordable housing is top of mind, embracing the economic opportunities that we have, not just businesses coming into Greensboro, but even businesses that are already here, that we strengthen them, making sure that public transit is not just about moving people, but also on tapping economic development along the routes. And of course, our MWBE program has to be stronger and improved and advanced. And we know that our employees, especially field operations, public safety, that's very important. But again, our goal is we want to become America's most desirable city, a mid-sized city, according to GSO 2040 Comprehensive Plan. If we have to achieve that, if you really want to achieve that, and I believe we can, this budget helps us to lay the foundation for that. So this is a recommended budget. This is manager's recommended budget for fiscal year 2022-2023, $688.7 million at a current property tax rate of 66 cents and a quarter. In all of this, we recommend and we understand that this is how we can balance the budget that we have with the different needs that are in front of us. This is the same total property tax rate that the current year has. Except that it is 11 and 69 cents higher than the revenue neutral rate of 54 and 56 cents. The revenue neutral rate, as you know, incorporates the impact of the 2022 countywide property revaluation. Primarily because of this revaluation this year, our assessed real estate value is projected at approximately $37 billion, which is 24% more than we had in FY 2021-22. This budget achieves your preferred goal of increasing the NOSBOM fund to a full cent. It also increases our investment in public transit so that we can redefine how we move people from place to place and create a connected city that is strategically positioned to compete economically. Again, this graphic in front of you illustrates the sources and uses of the budget. And so we anticipate a revenue that's approximately $689 million in this budget, with the majority of it coming from use of funds. And I will be talking about that briefly a little bit later. And property tax, while the bulk of our expenses will go towards personnel and maintenance and operations of our facilities and systems. The total recommended budget is broken into those three areas that I mentioned in terms of personnel cost, having about $300 million approximately, and their maintenance and operations with $373, and then expenses on our capital outlay, which is roughly $25 million. As part of our goal in making the city of Greensboro an employer of choice, we know that 42% of this budget is directed towards personnel costs, both for general employees and for our first responders. General funds account for 61 cents and 75 of the recommended budget, which is approximately 14% over what we had in the last fiscal year. Primarily, the general fund will be driven by 10 items led by debt service, adjustments to staff compensations, as we've heard from you and our employees, additional positions that we're bringing in from bottom to top, and a new initiative called Gateway Corridor Improvements, which really looks at most challenging corridors in the city and how we can leverage opportunities to create jobs in along those corridors and in those communities. So council members, the next series of slides will highlight for us key aspects of our recommended budget. As is typical of such an extensive process, the details will be discussed with us when we start our work sessions this Thursday and going through the month of June. However, these highlights are very important for our residents and our employees to see what we envision for moving our city forward and laying a solid foundation for a vibrant future. And I will start with this. So while the theme of the budget is about building on our growth momentum, we also recognize the fact that we have to structure our organization to be able to deliver on the promise of a better quality of life while adding more positions to be able to do so. So the budget recommends over 45 positions distributed across the organization by priorities. Whether they are new positions or they are mid-years, all of these positions are very important. What you have in front of you has about 37 new positions and about 8.25 net mid-year positions that were added mid-year. In addition to these grant-funded positions, though, what you don't see on the screen are other positions, and we'll be discussing that when we meet with you on Thursday forward. There are other positions that are not necessarily in general funds that are very important to this, such as 10 new positions, whether they be the public transit director, or 3 in parking funds, or 1 in stormwater, or 3 a sewer crew or water electrician, or they are about 11.5 positions with GTA. But all of these, along with general funds and other positions, really add over 60 some positions, whether they be new or again, mid-year to what we're doing. It's also important, as I mentioned earlier, facility maintenance is key to our future success. So over the next, this particular budget, actually over the next several months, you'll be seeing us making efforts to improve what we have today, whether it's $5.1 million for our facility maintenance, which will include Central Library, which will include your Bryant Park Center, your Sportsplex, a City Hall space renovations, the fire station, or even the cultural center. We'll be making key improvements to these facilities over the next several months. I mentioned earlier about this new initiative called the Gateway Corridor Improvements. If this turns out right, the idea is to be able to leverage this $1 million to attract private dollars. We'll be able to make improvements along major corridors that lead into our city, whether they be Helm, Eugene, or maybe Randuman. And it's very important that we go into some of these challenging corridors, see opportunities not to study something, but to implement recommendations from previous studies that can attract jobs and really uplift the lives of residents and businesses along those corridors. Of course, we've succeeded immensely with regards to our economic development, but we do not want to go back or look back. And so investing in it and strengthening it is also very important, whether through incentives or investments or even partnerships that we can create. Additionally, in support of our development sector, we will be adding more resources to our development review processes to achieve our common goals of expediting review processes. We are updating our fees to match what our peer cities currently do. We met with Trebic last week to discuss some of these new fees, and we have asked them to continue to review them alongside with us. Not only are we doing this, but we have also heard repeatedly about the need for resources to advance our minority women business-owned women business enterprise program. And so we are adding over $250,000 to the program, while adding 3 positions to support the program, as we have heard from our advisory committee and from some of you. From bottom up, I want to see us as an organization that's structured to deliver effective and efficient services to our residents and businesses. This means, of course, that we have to reorganize how we do business. We have to re-envision how we do business. I've talked about creating a Department of General Services, pulling public transit out of transportation and making it an entity on its own. But we've not really talked so much about what we're doing with our neighborhood development, which is really rebranding it and restructuring it. So instead of it being called neighborhood development, we'll call it housing and neighborhood development, and restructure it in such a way that the focus is not just on code compliance, but also providing affordable housing units for those who need it the most. In the city manager's office, during the year, we hired a chief sustainability officer, and we also hired an assistant to the city manager. But we are also going to be hiring an assistant city manager to focus on culture and recreation, especially if we really want that message to be really strongly encouraged in our community. We'll be hiring an end gun violence coordinator that will really be that bridge between what the city does and what our Care Violence group does. And it's very important that when we invest in anything, we also have to define metrics and outcomes. How do we measure this? How do we measure success when we get there? How do we know that we're successful? And so having an end gun violence coordinator, I believe, will help us to really achieve our goal of reducing violent crimes and really getting us to where we want to get to as a safe community. We also have not had an intergovernmental relations manager as a city, someone who can relate to you and our universities or our school system, or be able to work to not just only when they need something from us or when we need something from them, but someone who will keep the dialogue going between us and those organizations as well. So it's very important, of course, as we mentioned during the rezoning process, we talked about the fact that we're growing. And so Well, I need to go back right there. Just went all the way to the very end. That's not where I should go. So we talked about the importance of public safety, talked about adding 8 police patrol positions to our police department, but also we're getting into the second year of a 5-year installment of 20 take-home police vehicles. And so this is the second year that we'll do that for a 5-year installment. And in order to be able to make our community continue to have increased confidence in the services that we provide, we'll continue to add $300,000 or so to what Axon does when it comes to body camera, vehicle camera, and additional data services for our police department. Similarly, our fire department, we're going to be adding 15 positions to our fire company during this budget period. We do know that our parks and recreation environment is the envy of other cities in this state and actually nationally. And we have to keep this up by making sure that we support that department with appropriate staffing and equipment as well. For Creative Greensboro, we committed to $500,000 to implement Cultural Arts Master Plan. However, we've not lived up to that commitment over the past years. We've consistently allocated $100,000 in budget, $75,000 for arts residency, and $25,000 for special event support, which is really way below what we committed. So this recommended budget begins to make Creative Greensboro whole by adding $400,000 to their budget. We also know that human rights has become even more important pre-George Floyd, but even post-George Floyd. And it's very important that as a city, as we have grown about 30,000 more people over the last 10 years, we've grown more diverse. We've had more people coming from different parts of the world to be part of what we do in our city. And so having an international support coordinator as part of our human rights, Office of Human Rights is very critical. We know that we've seen it, supply and cost of materials have gone up. And so we're making sure that we're including $4.1 million in this budget that will help us be able to manage our fuel increases and increase solid waste contracts. The cost of asphalt, chemicals, and other supplies have increased significantly, and it's very important for us to be able to keep pace with those costs. We know that we live in an increasingly dangerous technical or technologically sound world. So it's very important for us that we also invest in our system security and effectiveness so our employees can feel protected from external intrusion. And we know that I've spoken with you and I've spoken with a number of our employees over the last 4 months. We've heard from you, we've heard from them about employee compensation. And so what we recommend is 2% base market adjustments and 3% merit for general employees, which means about 5%, and 3% base market adjustment and 4% merit for sworn police, fire, and 911 staff that are eligible. Additionally, we recommend $1.8 million to be able to address compression, bless you, and other competitive increases with increases in starting pay for our public safety officials to keep us competitive in hiring. On this Thursday, we will start discussing the general funds as well as water resources, but over time we'll begin to give you specifics as to what the starting pay will look like and how we intend to address the compression with this $1.8 million. But what's very important to me though is not just the compensation, while I know that that's very critical, but we want this budget to also demonstrate our organization's commitment to provide a competitive overall benefit-rich environment for city employees. We want to be an employer of choice, not only in this region, but statewide. And how do we do that? It's about everything that you see on here, making sure that our employees have access to good healthcare, have access to good mental health screening. We actually talk about 10 free visits for mental well-being for the employees. We've heard about tuition reimbursement. But one thing that we like to do in this budget is also provide what we call tuition assistance. Right, some of our employees who would like to take advantage of what community colleges have to offer in terms of 2-year degrees in associate, but sometimes they may not be able to afford it. How can we work with a GTCC to be able to upfront some cost so that our employees will be able to take advantage of this over a period of time? That also continues to make sure that we value them, but also that we want to retain some of these talents that we have by educating them, training them, and keeping them here rather than losing them. But why we do that is also to take a good look at our down payment assistance as we have it today. how can we make sure that we carve out a portion of that down payment assistance and increase that carve out portion to support our employees who really want to put down payment to buy homes in this city rather than outside. So those are very important conversations for us to have as we go through the work session, but we know that that's a very important part of this budget. A few weeks ago, I think a couple of weeks ago, you made a decision to increase the fund balance by recommendation of the local government commission to 25%, achievable by 2027. We know that we're a fiscally sound city. We're financially healthy. Our AAA rating is solid. However, I believe that was a very sound financial decision by this council to make. So over the next 5 years, starting with this fiscal year, we will continue to make, continue to add to our fund balance to make sure that we get to the place where we all want to get to. In order to achieve this goal, however, the use of these funds will remain limited for emergency purposes as determined by supermajority of council. As I run to the end of my presentation, I want to quickly highlight that there are other aspects of this budget that you should be aware of before we move into work session this Thursday. One of those is our investment in public transit. I mentioned earlier that we're going to go from what we have as a current rate of 2.88 cents to about 3.50 cents. That will allow us to be able to do a lot of things, such as invest in crosstown routes on our most productive routes in the city and improving their frequencies. Right now, you may be able to drive throughout this city for about 15 minutes, but that's only if you have a vehicle. If you don't, it could easily take you an hour and a half to get to where you want to go. But if we have infusion of funds, we're able to not only redefine how we travel in this city, but we can re-envision completely the landscape around public transit with this investment. So we're envisioning the future of public transit to transform the city of Greensboro is going to be very important as we go into this budget. Council has also expressed the desire to increase northbound to a full cent. This budget does that. What this budget does with that is to add $1.1 million in addition so that we can really be able to support the implementation of housing GSO plan. We also, Thursday, we'll be talking to you about water resources, about $141 million in investment. While we talk about increasing the rate, you also have to understand that even with the increased rate, only the city of Burlington has a lower rate than us in the entire state. And so even with that increased rate, we are still almost at the very bottom in terms of what we charge our residents. We talk about the Coliseum complex and how it's important for us to continue to keep that because it's an economic engine for us. We do know that the Tanger Center is projected to be self-sufficient this fiscal year, but we'll continue to make some transfer to the Coliseum as a whole. And we've also are going to have some significant general fund debt service support. And so it's very important for us when we look at parking operations, how to make sure that we continue to take care of what we need to do in that realm. So what's next in the budget review and adoption process? It starts today. And with my presentation to you this evening, and we're going to move into a series of work sessions beginning this Thursday with water resources and general fund. And then we'll go through again on June 9 and June 14. We're exploring an opportunity to be able to have an open forum with the community post June 7 of public hearing where we can actually hear directly from them. But we also encourage our residents to go online and use the simulator to be able to contribute and really provide input into the budget process. So finally, this is very uncomfortable seeing myself on that screen, but, but finally, I want to thank our dedicated staff throughout the city who have really worked diligently over the past several months to identify areas of need specific to their different subject matter areas. But also our budget staff who have been creative to find ways to accommodate some of these needs. Maybe not all of those needs are accommodated in this budget, but we started the journey today to making sure that we address those, not just in this budget, but in subsequent budgets to come. The collaborative nature of this team is very refreshing. And I appreciate the opportunity that I have to be able to work with them. So Mayor and Council, this is now your budget. We look forward to engaging you in very robust discussions during the several work sessions starting this Thursday, May 26th at 2 p.m. Thank you very much.
Mr. Manager. Thank you for this. I know people look at this. I want you to talk a little bit about what in this whole package will positively affect safe and affordable housing.
So I'll go back to the NUSBAM.
Now, beside the
yes.
NUSBAM fund, I mean, that's great, but that's not a lot of money considering the challenges we're having. So talk a little bit about how we're going to deal with that.
We're also going to increase what we have towards down payment assistance for our residents as well, and that's very important. I also believe that restructuring and rebranding the department allows focus, not just on code compliance, but even the delivery of housing units. So what you're going to see over the next few weeks is we're going to have an assistant director that's really dedicated to housing, not just ownership, but also rental. Understanding fully well that we need to have different products in housing. You had said, I think in a couple council meetings ago, that you wanted a group of stakeholders to come together and discuss how we can make sure that our residents are not, who are especially the most vulnerable, are kept in place. And we're currently working on that and putting together a plan. But we also know that all of these things need funding and creative ideas as to how you can make them happen. So we're working with Community Foundation. We're also making sure that we work with the different stakeholders in the community. Also, be mindful that we still have a bond referendum that is to come that has some dollar amount in there for housing, not just about building new ones, but also preservation of existing housing stock. And there's a lot of money in there for rental and protecting our most vulnerable residents. But there's also the American Rescue Plan funds that we're still going to come back to. I think a couple council meetings ago, you made a decision to take out of that and to spend some millions on affordable housing. We're going to continue to come back to you with regards to that, working with partnerships across the city to make sure that we deliver on that.
Thank you. I wanted people to hear that.
Thank you.
Following up on what the Mayor Pro Tem said, I think at our last work session, I had asked for like the mini budget on what the NUSBAM fund was paying, what
Yes.
it looked like, and I don't think we've gotten that information yet.
Yes, our commitment is that we will get that to you before your work session on Thursday. A breakdown of how we have spent the previous 0.69 cents is what I understand. Yes.
Well, we wanted to see what the 0.69 was spent on, but we want it, or I believe we want it to be a full penny, but I wanted to see what the 6.9 was actually being spent on. Is it actually being spent on housing, or is it being spent on admin? Because I don't think that what we want to see is that it's heavy on admin and it's not going to the people who really need it. So if we could get that, and it would have been good to have this presentation prior to right now, because I want to go back and forth between different sheets, but we haven't gotten it yet. I know everybody's interested in the tax rate, and I can't go back to see what it was you proposed. I think we are at 66.25
Yes.
currently.
Right. It was the current rate.
6625.
Yeah. It's the current
66
rate.
and a
He
quarter.
said he proposes 6.8 point.
No, it was 66.25
That's what it is now.
is what it
Oh,
is
he
now.
keeps it flat.
But then he mentioned
Oh, it
something
went up.
about 11 cents less. So I don't know what that 11 cent meant.
6625.
Okay.
So
And
what?
that's our current tax rate.
So
Consensus.
the change is 11.69.
From the revenue neutral, yes.
Certainly I would like to see us move off of that tax rate, because, we have with property reevaluations, we certainly are realizing more in property tax, but I think that some people are still having sticker shock over the reevaluations. So I would like us to take a look at this. I need some time to digest what it was you sent us. I like to see the increase in positions, but especially when you're looking at like public safety, police and fire, and it appears that we are adding positions, but we're not even at 100% full employment right now. So are we actually adding those positions when we're down? I know we're down in police. I think we're about even in fire when it comes to the number of positions. I'm not sure, but I don't want to just make it look like we added 8 police officers when we're down 50. Is it really, do we really think we can gain 58 in the next year? So I guess that's kind of more information that I want. And I know that we've had conversations about the starting pay. You referenced the starting pay, but didn't exactly say what it was.
Yes.
And I know compression is a big issue with public safety and with the rest of the staff going to a step plan. I guess there's an awful lot going on in my mind right now. I want to make sure if we're saying we're going to add positions that we can actually add them and we're not just doing it on paper. What that starting salary looks like. We have talked about some things with the fire department and eliminating the what was it, lieutenants, and going to a roving captains. And is that included in this? And how do
Yes.
we handle the compression issues, especially in police and fire? So I know I rambled a lot on that, but Hugh, Tammy, Sharon, Mary Kay.
Thanks, you. Thank you for this budget, and I really appreciate the fact that the budget tries to envelop everything that we've requested, and we've had quite the comprehensive list of items. As the mayor said, I'm kind of hopeful that we can skinny this back and reduce the tax rate to offset some of the increase in value. And I look forward to getting into the discussions further. I was particularly appreciated the fact that you had something in there for the compensation incentives, because I think that's something that I certainly have heard from staff, and I appreciate you hearing that message from me. As the mayor said, I look forward to getting into the guts of what we can really expect, and in terms of some of these hires and filling some of these positions, and to see more details on how we're handling the whole compensation piece, because I think that's a lot of questions for a lot of people. And I look forward to that, but I am hoping that we can scale this back somewhat and kind of skinny it back so that we have an effective reduction in tax rate to some extent. I understand that we can't possibly get to accomplish what we want to accomplish. We can't go revenue neutral, but is there some in between ground? But I do want to thank you, because I feel like you heard our messages loud and clear since you've been here, and you've tried to address those, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Hugh?
Yes, and thank you, Mr. City Manager. You're probably going to hear a lot of the same things from a lot of us up here this evening. So one, thank you again for pulling this together, pulling your team together, and building a comprehensive plan. I especially like the terms, obviously, about the compensation issue, because we need to keep our employees and keep them effective, but also sustainability was a big term that I saw tonight, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of that. And of course, we'll have the time to go into the work sessions and work through these things. I'll use the term disappointed that we didn't come closer to a revenue neutral number. It's going to be very important for the transparency, not only for council, but also for our fellow residents, that if we're not going to come in at a revenue neutral, that we show our work. Hopefully your team has started to create maybe a summary of where we are today and where the increases are, so that everybody can see where the changes are occurring just in a snapshot, and then be able to dig in when they have these public hearings, be able to dig in. Again, we were at 66, revenue neutral is at 51, but we came back up to, is it 51?
54.
54, excuse me, you're right, 11 difference. 54, then back up to 66. It's going to be incumbent upon us as good stewards to show that work And then obviously council working in session to see where we do spend that money and how we spend it for the benefit of all. But again, thanks so very much for presenting this. And I guess now the hard work starts.
Thank you.
Sharon?
So thank you for the budget. And I would have liked to have had the budget book to go through it as you go through it, because there's a whole lot of questions that I have that I guess I'll have to wait till Thursday. But I would have
You'll have
liked
the budget book before Thursday.
Hmm.
You will have the budget book before Thursday.
before Thursday.
Yes.
Yeah, because I would like to actually go through it and review it. And everybody's concerned about, the tax rate. But what I'm really concerned about is to make sure that our employees are looked out for and to make sure that the investment are in the areas that have been lacking for a long time. One of them is transit. You talk about that. And we've been working on it, but nobody's put the money, we haven't put the money there the way we should have. We need to invest. So I'm not sure if it's getting 8 more police officers as opposed to making sure that people are able to move throughout the city to get to work, to all these new jobs that have come and brought hope, but people still don't have a way to get there. I really want to hear more about that and hear more about the housing piece of it as well. Because it's not just affordable housing, it's housing affordability for all. I think that's critically important that we have that discussion as well. So, I was hearing some things about field ops and things like that. So I'm hoping we can go into that. I didn't hear very much on capital projects. And I know there's some projects that haven't been done, that I'm wondering how we can get some of those things done. I know the library had an issue. There's not some parts and rec things need to be done that the community, the citizens are requesting and asking for, and I haven't seen or heard how we are going to address some of that moving forward with this budget. So I'm hoping we can get some of that done. I understand the tax concern, but sometimes you got to spend a little bit to get a lot. And, I don't want us to stretch too thin because I think that's what we're doing now. We're catching up. And because we really have been deficient in a lot of areas, particularly in the east side of Greensboro, where we have not invested in the manner that we should have. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of that as
Thank you.
well.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mary Kay, then Justin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Mr. City Manager. And I know how hard you and your team have all worked on this, so I want to thank everyone. Of course, I would love to see some sense off of the tax rate as well. I think you're hearing that from several council members up there. Of course, we don't want to hurt any of our services to our community. We want to make sure that we can provide. I do worry, and I know we're going to dig deeper into all of this on Thursday, but I do worry that we are still losing many good employees who are going to other cities. Many of them are peer cities who are paying so much more. And I always use the example, of course, I want to include all employees, but we pay $80,000 to $100,000 training our public safety. And then 2-3 years later, they are enticed by other cities like Cary for much more money. So we've done all the training and spent all that money and then they're gone. And, I just want us to be very mindful of that fact. Also, the compression issues, I think that you are very well aware. I see how much work has gone into this, and I truly want to thank you for all that you've done on this. And I do believe that you have listened to us, and we want to do so many things for the city, but it's kind of hard when you don't have all the monies. But, I do think the citizens would like to see some kind of reduction in their tax rate because a lot of people are being hit with this high reevaluation. So I think that's something that I would like to see if at all possible. So thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate that.
Justin?
Thank you. The hazard of being one of the last people to speak, as others have remarked before, is so many wonderful points have already been made. My first comments are about kind of the same points others have made about the taxes. For context, I think it's important to understand and recognize that this budget is significantly larger than the last budget because community members will be paying more taxes largely because their properties are now more valuable. And so the rate is kept the same, but because the values are more, the city will have a lot more resources to in fact expand services than it has in years past. For me, I don't view taxes as being per se good or per se bad. To a comment that's been made by another council person, I think it depends on what are you getting for your expenditure of those precious resources, recognizing that for many families, it takes money out of their households that they need or otherwise would use to help sustain those households. So, you know, to Councilperson Holston's point, it's about being a good steward of those resources. Given the large increase in the size of the budget, through an increase in the amount of taxes that people will pay at a time where affordability is a really great concern with inflation and the increasing cost of everything, I will say one area that I would have loved to seen us resolve, whether it was through nearly $60 million of unallocated money through the American Rescue Plan or through this very large budget, would be making sure that our emergency fund, the fund balance, meets the local government commission's 25% requirement. In a budget that is expanded through increases in taxes, and in a year in which we have over, approximately $60 million unallocated, to me, it would have been a good thing to shore up the financial foundation of the city by taking $9 million in making sure that we have that good financial foundation. $9 million out of a $600 million budget is like 1.5%. And so if for some reason there was trepidation about using the unallocated $60 million in American Rescue Plan, certainly I think $9 million, especially when we've increased the size of the budget so significantly, I think that would have been a good thing for the council to pursue. And I'll have questions and encouragement in that regard on Wednesday, as well as subsequent to that. Additionally, we've discussed several months ago the fact that, whether it's the current tax rate, quite frankly, even if it's a revenue neutral rate, there are a lot of persons, low-income persons, persons on fixed incomes, including seniors, who are really going to be struggling to pay the taxes in these coming years. And so whether it be between now and the work session or at the work session, just hopefully staff will give us a timeline of when we're going to have staff recommendations on the plan that was offered before about tax relief for low-income persons, including seniors. Additionally, to remarks that have been made by other council members with regard to having additional positions for police officers, obviously, if the city's struggling to fill those positions, there's a strong likelihood that those positions may not be filled in at least the near term, even if those additional positions are added. One of the questions that I would love for staff to be prepared to answer at the work session is, what do we receive through an expansion of the budget? Because adding additional positions increases the size of the police budget and increases the ability of officers to work overtime. If that's a way that we can get faster response times, although ideally, of course, it would be filling the positions with new officers, but an increase in the size of the budget may have utility in terms of the goals that you've articulated, as well as those that are articulated by the council. Additionally, I know several persons have made kind of comments to the effect that they would love to see the effective rate go down. It still would be increases in taxes. So really it's just shrinking the size of the increase in terms of the money that would be in this budget. I'd be interested to know, and I think it'd be a healthy discussion to have, even at the early stages, what that would look like and where would that come from in your proposed budget, at least what the recommendations that you would make in that regard. Again, thank you and your staff for putting in such hard work and hearing so many voices.
Thank you.
The facility maintenance, 5.1 million, major maintenance includes roof and HVAC systems. I know we had talked about some of that in reference to ARP funds. I would be curious to see if the 5.1 million how that would work out if we took that from ARP and put it on fund balance and did the maintenance through the budget? Or is this maintenance considered a one-time cost or a recurring cost? And you don't have to answer that today, but I would be interested to see the way the math works out. And regarding the, the empty positions, I know that we actually went over budget, and the city manager has the ability to allow for more overtime, and it's not in relation to the number of employees or the size of the budget, that we have exceeded that budget in the past, and that the city manager approved those expenditures. So I think this is great. I want to thank you and your staff. John, I saw you, I'm sorry. I saw you downtown yesterday working on a break. So I know that you guys work through the weekends, and I really appreciate it. Mrs. Hoffman, I'm sorry I missed you.
Are you, I'm okay?
Yeah,
Okay,
go ahead.
Good, thanks. Just a couple of comments. Thank you very much, Mr. City Manager. I think you've been very comprehensive in terms of the scope of your thinking and what you've presented to us. I look at a budget in a couple of ways. I think it speaks to our priorities. And in terms of a city budget, it speaks to whether we want to be a good city, a better city, or a best city. And I think some of the things that you're recommending and some of the things that we're going to have to grapple with at this point is that we've experienced a tremendous amount of growth over the last decade. And we expect that to continue perhaps at a greater pace. So we're going to have to address some things, and we're going to have to do some things differently than we've done in the past. If we want that growth to continue, and if we want to continue to be the very attractive city that we feel that we are and continue to aspire to, which will make us attractive to even more business and industry and population growth. So, I'd just like for us to keep those things in mind as we work through these budget challenges, and as we think about really what our priorities are, and how making the investments that are truly going to enable this city to continue on the growth pattern that we are on, because that really is going to be helpful to us in every way. So thank you very much. I appreciate the work that you and the staff have done.
Thank you.
So we need a motion to accept the budget, and I believe that gives the city clerk the ability to publish it. We did get the handouts for today's by email just now.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Holston, seconded by Ms. Abuzawader. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ms. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower? And that passes 8-0. We would like to take a quick break right now. We don't have a whole lot left on our agenda, but if we could take a quick break. It's up to you, 10 minutes.
Okay, thank you so much.
Good evening and welcome back to our city council meeting. We will now take items I.2 through I.6. Item number I.2 is a resolution authorizing city attorney to institute proceedings to condemn a portion of real estate of Luther G. and Ellen M. Coble designated at parcel RC 80640 in connection with the Greensboro Randolph Mega Site Water and Sewer Extension Project. Item I.3, resolution authorizing city attorney to institute proceedings to condemn a portion of the real estate of Kelly L. and Ginger R. Coble designated parcel RC 85972 in connection with the Greensboro Randolph Mega Site Water and Sewer Extension Project. Item I.4, resolution authorizing city attorney to institute proceedings to condemn a portion of real estate of Dwayne F. and Carol S. Wall designated at parcel RC 74572 in connection with the Greensboro Randolph Water and Sewer Extension Project. I.5, resolution authorizing city attorney to institute proceedings to condemn a portion of real estate of Kelly L. Coble designated at parcel RC 85971 in connection with the Greensboro Randolph Mega Site Water and Sewer Extension Project. And I.6, resolution approving contract 2020-041B in the amount of $467,453 with HDR Engineering of the Carolinas for bidding and construction administration services for the mega site Phase 3 Liberty Road Water and Sewer Improvement Project.
Let me ask a question of the attorney, please. Mr. Attorney, these folk just won't sell. I mean, do we offer to buy the property?
No, we're in the process of attempting to negotiate with all of them and have settled most of them.
Okay. all right.
This is
Well,
just to make sure that the timelines
I
are
got
in
you.
line
All
and so that
right.
we
I
don't
just
get
wondered
offside.
what- How the procedure. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and this is
Go
just,
right ahead.
this is just a
I got you. I understand.
construction easement. They're not giving their property up. They
Exactly.
keep the property.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, I respectfully asked to be recused on these items. The law firm at which I'm a partner, Brooks Pierce, advises the Greensboro Randolph Mega Site Foundation in connection with the Mega Site project, and these have a connection to that.
Do we have a motion? Moved by Mr. Holston, seconded by Mrs. Hoffman. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes 8-0. I need a resolution. I'm
She
sorry,
made the
Mrs. Hoffman.
motion. She made the motion.
She made the motion on I.2.
Yes.
Is there a second? Second by Mrs. Thurm. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston? Mayor
Yes.
Pro Tem? I'm a yes. Mrs. Busewader? Yes. Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And that passes 7-0. Item I.3,
Second.
moved by Mr. Holston, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Mayor Pro
Yes.
Tem? I'm a yes. Mrs. Busewader?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And that passes 7-0. Item I.4, moved by Mrs. Hoffman, second
Second.
by Mr. Holston. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Mayor Pro
Yes.
Tem? I am a yes. Mrs. Busewader?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
That passes 7-0. Item I.5,
Move the item.
moved by Mrs. Thurm,
Second.
seconded by Mayor Pro Tem. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mrs. Busewader?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And that passes 7-0. Item I.6. Moved by
Second.
Mrs. Hoffman, seconded by Mr. Holston.
So I have a quick question. Please. This is professional services. Is that right, Mr. City Attorney? Is that what I'm seeing here?
Yes.
So who can tell me, maybe Mr. City Manager, when are y'all gonna start applying goals to the professional services? Because this is professional services. And the memo says, again, no goals. They ask people to do the right thing, but, and there's a couple of, there's one MB, one WB. We just keep seeing that happen repeatedly over and over and over.
I believe we'll have some opportunities coming up here with the new iteration of the disparity study to strengthen some of our processes.
With the new disparity study,
Yes.
but that's gonna take us a year, then the recommendations have to come down. And so the recommendations have already been in effect for over a year, 5 years. And there's been 2 training offered by Griffin and Strong to set goals on professional services, yet it hasn't been implemented. That's what I'm asking about. I know the new disparity study will probably bring that about too, but I'm just trying to understand where we are with this. Because a lot of money is coming through this mega site. A lot of money. And I think the goals are critically important. And I appreciate y'all don't have an answer today, but I would like to get an answer. Thank you, Chris.
So there was a motion and a second on that item. I can't remember who that was. Hoffman, Holston?
Holston, H and H.
H2. Council, please vote. Hoffman, Holston. Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston?
I really want to vote no, but I know I'm going to vote yes, but I agree with Sharon. The way you change things is not to allow it to happen. People change quickly. I'm going to vote yes this time because it's the mega site and I know it's an economic development thing, but y'all think about that. If we really want to change something, you got to step up and vote no on some of the stuff you're voting yes on. I'm guilty because I'm voting yes tonight, but I'm uncomfortable voting yes.
If I'm correct, this one has 14.97 MBE and 6.42, even though there were no goals set and it would be helpful for goals, but
Well, I didn't think there were any.
But it's no goal set on it. So what this.
Oh, well, I
what-
feel
what-
better. I
what
feel a
this-
little better.
What this is this is a commitment, okay? This is a commitment, okay? That's different between if there's
Yeah,
goals.
but I feel
and then
better.
you're
If it's
doing it.
14%,
It's a
I feel
commitment.
better.
You understand?
No, it's not.
So there's a difference and there's a reason why it's set that way. So.
Okay, I got you.
Yes, ma'am. I am a yes. Mrs. Guzlater?
Yes.
Mr. Alvin? Oh, I'm sorry, that was the last one. Mrs. Stern?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower? No. So that passes 6-1. Item I.7, resolution authorizing a security service contract for various city departments in the amount of $1,709,490 with East Coast Protective Services.
Move the item.
second,
Moved by Mrs. Hightower, seconded by Mr. Holston. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Holston?
yes.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mrs. Guzlater?
Yes.
Mr. Alvin?
Yes.
Mrs. Stern?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And that passes 8-0. Item I.8, resolution approving bid in the amount of $5,097,631.32 and authorizing execution of contract 2018-048 with Yates Construction Company for the Green Street Streetscape Project.
Move the item.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Hightower, seconded by Mrs. Johnson. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mrs. Boothwaiter? Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And that passes 8-0. We will take item I.9 through I.13. Item I.9 is a resolution approving the offer and acceptance of state grant funding from the NC Department of Environmental Quality State Fiscal Recovery Funds in the amount of $7 million for the Camp Burton Lift Station Gravity and Sewer Force Main construction.
Move.
I'm just gonna read them all.
Okay.
Item I.10 is an ordinance to amend state, federal, and other grant fund budget to establish funding for the Camp Burton Lift Station Force Main and Gravity Sewer Construction Project in the amount of $7 million. I.11, resolution approving the offer and acceptance of a state grant funding from the NC Environmental Quality State Fiscal Recovery Funds in the amount of $3 million for the Camp Burton waterline construction. And I.12, ordinance to amend federal, state, and other grant fund budgets to establish funding for the Camp Burton water main construction project in the amount of $3 million. I.13, ordinance to amend the Water Resources Capital Revenue Bond Fund budget to establish funding for the Camp Burton sewer line construction project in the amount of $11,849,329. And I.16, resolution approving bid in the amount of $18,849,326.40 and authorizing execution of contract 2020-007C with Jimmy R. Lynch and Sons, Inc. for the Camp Burton Lift Station Force Main and Gravity Sewer Project. So we will start with I.9.
Move the item.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Boozawaiter, seconded by Mrs. Thurm. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mrs. Boozawaiter?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
That passes 8-0. I need a motion on I.10.
Move the item.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Thurm, seconded by Mrs. Boozawaiter. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem? I am a yes. Mrs. Boozawaiter?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And that passes 8-0. I need a resolution on I-11.
Move the item. Second.
Moved by Mrs. Thurm, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Mayor Pro
Yes.
Tem? I'm a yes. Mr. Boozawaiter? Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And that passes 8-0. Item I.12.
Move the item.
Moved by Mr. Boozawaiter, seconded by
Second.
Mrs. Thurm. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mr. Boozawaiter?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
That passes 8-0. Item I-13,
Move the item.
moved by Mrs. Johnson, seconded by
Second.
Mr. Boozawaiter. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Mayor Pro
Yes.
Tem? I'm a yes. Mr. Boozawaiter?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
That passes 8-0. And then finally, I.16,
Move the item.
Second.
moved by Mrs. Thurm, seconded by Mr. Boozawaiter. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mrs. Boozawaiter?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
Mrs. Hightower?
I have a question before I vote yes or no. And it's an MWB question. It has participation. I'm very concerned about And I think I talked to the city attorney today, about some of this, some of the language in the, but let me ask you this, maybe you can find this out for me. Can a prime contractor be a sub? Because one of the vendors on here is also a prime contractor. So can a prime be a sub in our sub program?
Yeah, a prime could be a sub. I mean, that's kind of a tortured language because if the prime is functioning as a sub, it's not a prime. So it may be
So they can have
typically
a,
functioning as a prime, but if it's functioning as a sub, it's not a prime.
so you can have a dual role? Because I've never seen it
No.
this way.
In a
If we
particular,
have a sub, basically it's a sub program. So you would be a subcontractor doing work under a prime. Like this.
correct. In this particular instance, I think you're talking about a company that tends to be a prime contractor, a general contractor. I mean,
Correct.
that's their general role in projects, but in this particular project, they're functioning as a sub.
And that's acceptable in our program.
That on its face is definitely acceptable.
confusing.
You could have multiple roles. You're not locked into one role just because that's your typical role. There are definitely other questions that could be discussed about this. But I think any way you come out on it, this particular contractor has exceeded, the goals on the
Yeah,
project.
yeah, the person is exceeded to go. And the question was actually gonna be on I-14, but since we jumped to I-16, and it just came up, and I was wondering if that's possible. Could they go from that to being a sub? Okay. All right, thank you for the answer.
And your vote is?
Yeah.
And that passes 8-0. I will read I-14 and 15 into the record. I-14 is a resolution approving a change order in the amount of $1,300,000 for contract 2019-006A with Jimmy R. Lynch and Sons, Inc. for the Reedy Fork Water Line Extension and Sewer Outfall Project. And item I.15, ordinance to amend the Water Resources Capital Project Revenue Bond Fund Balance to fund a change order for the construction of Reedy Fork Water Line Construction Project in the amount of $1,300,000. Any questions on these items?
Well, he answered my one particular question.
Move the item.
Moved by Mrs. Thurm, seconded by Mr. Boothwaiter. Council, please vote.
That's for sure.
Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah.
I'm a yes. Mr. Boothwaiter?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And that passes 8-0. I need a motion on I-15.
Move the item.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Boothwaiter, seconded by Mr. Holston. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ms. Boothwaiter?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And that passes 8-0. We will take I-17 and 18 together. I-17 is an order authorizing the sale and issuance by the city of Greensboro, North Carolina, not to exceed $96 million combined enterprise system revenue bonds, series 2022, and authorizing the execution and delivery of certain documents in connection therewith. And item I-18, ordinance in the amount of $94,076,640, amending the fiscal year 21-22 Water Resources Enterprise Fund for refinancing 2020 Revenue Bond Anticipation Note and Series 2012A Revenue Bonds. Any questions on these items?
Move the item.
Moved by Mr. Holston, seconded by Ms. Boothwaiter. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah.
I'm a yes. Mrs. Boothwaider?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And that passes 8-0.
Move the next I-18.
Moved by Mrs.
Second.
Johnson, seconded by Mr. Holston. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yep.
I am a yes. Mrs. Boothwaider?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And that passes 8-0. We will take item I-19 and I-20 together. Resolution authorizing the demolition contract for Heritage House in the amount of $1,145,000 with DH Griffin Wrecking Company LLC. And item I-20, ordinance amending the NISBOM Housing Partnership Revolving Fund and General Capital Improvements Fund in the amount of $939,829 for Heritage House demolition with
Move
DH
item
Griffin.
I-19.
Moved by Mrs. Hightower, seconded by Mr. Holston. Council, please vote.
It has been a long time coming, so thank you, staff.
Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
No. I'd just like to see something else. I'd like to see it restored, but that's, I've
Okay.
already talked to Sherry. I understand
Okay.
everything.
I am a yes. Mrs. Boothwaider?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And that passes 7-1.
And so can I say, Yvonne, that the demo, we will leave the wall for the Meridian.
Okay.
So we're taking down everything but the wall. So the
Meridian.
Meridian will remain. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. There is also a redevelopment plan in place
Oh, but
as
then
well.
I say, can I change my vote to yes?
Yes, you can.
I'm changing my vote to yes.
That passes 8-0. We hadn't moved on to the next item yet.
You know, I remember going for the ribbon cuttings and all of that and thinking what a great idea this was. And no, it didn't work out. It just, anyway.
Yeah, it was,
All right.
ultimately, it was a disaster.
Yeah, it turned into a major disaster. $54 million worth of repairs would have taken it. So
Yeah.
I think in the long run,
That's a sign.
it's gonna do something for that area, Yvonne. I think it really will enhance that area. It stopped well over 28,000 police fire calls, everything.
Thank
So,
goodness we don't have to respond to those
to
calls right
the-
now.
right, so we're short. So
Thank
I
you,
think,
Steve.
yeah, it's got a plan in place of redevelopment. So now let's go find some
I'm
redevelopment
glad.
for that area.
Okay.
Yes.
So now we are on item, let's see, that was I-20.
Move the item.
Moved by Mrs. Hightower, seconded by Mr. Holston. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem? I am a yes. Mr. Boothwaider?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And that passes 8-0. All right, that is the end of our printed agenda. Thank you all for helping us move through that pretty quickly. Boards and commissions, Mrs. Hoffman? Mr. Holston?
I have none tonight, but I do have a need for, in the future for the ABC Board, the Insurance Advisory Commission, and Parks and Rec. So if interested, please reach out.
Mayor Pro Tem, any boards and commissions?
No, but Walter the third is enjoying the Parks and Recreation Board. He loves it.
Good. I don't have any this evening. Mr. Boothwaider? Mr. Alvin?
None this evening, thank you.
Mrs. Thurm?
Just one, and it's an early reappointment. I don't think his term is quite up yet, but Steve Barkdale reappointing to the Board of Adjustment.
Is there a second on that?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Outling. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 8-0.
Thank you.
Mrs. Hightower?
No, I don't have any tonight, but I will have some coming up for Board of Adjustment as well. But also as the GTA liaison, and Goldie's not here tonight, her person She has two. One will need to be replaced and one will need to be reappointed. Ms. Hoffman, you will have one that need to be replaced. We're still waiting on you to replace Adam Carroll. And then now you will need to reappoint Jeffrey Surgeon if that's your desire. So we'll need to have those in place at least by July.
Council comments, Mrs. Hightower?
I don't know. It's been a long couple of weeks. I've already talked about my last week on the league board, so I think, right now I can't think of anything. I do want to ask staff though, where are we with renaming Carolyn Coleman Way? Because that is where I'm looking to see if we can get that done. I think it's July. So do you know where we are with the process of working on that?
Would you be kind enough to let me get you something tomorrow?
That'd be fine.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we kind of on track and we don't lose, focus on what we need to do. So that's fine. Thank you.
Mrs. Thurm?
There's been so much that's gone on in the past week. It's kind of crazy how many events we've all been to in the past week. I do want to do a shout out to the group Biking Greensboro. I don't know whether if you all are familiar with them. Great organization that is teaching children and adults how to ride a bike. And they have taken me on as a special project since I never learned to ride a bike as a kid. And I have taken a couple classes with them and I'm working on it. But I attended their class for children and they probably had a dozen kids there learning to ride their bikes. And it was great. And they're going to spend the summer going from park to park throughout the city. The first series was at Trotter and Hester Park. And I think the next one is at Barber Park, maybe. But you can look up Biking Greensboro, and for both adults and kids that don't know how to ride, it's a great program, and it's not nearly as scary for adults as you would think. So there were several of us grown-ups there together, and it was a great experience, and I'd encourage people to look into it. It's in conjunction with our Parks Department, I believe.
Mr. Outling?
In a similar vein, lots of events in the past couple of weeks. I would encourage people who are interested in hearing about those things, at least with regard to me, to just check out my social media. It'll be updated regularly, one of which includes an event at Trotter Recreation Center for the OPEAT program that provides computer literacy to seniors that I will tell you was especially touching to see how transformative it was for seniors to be able to use computers and technology and the like. But really, even more so than commenting on those things, as many of you know, I'm originally from Buffalo, New York, which was the site of horrific, really an act of terrorism and racism that resulted in the deaths of 10 people. And that's the community in which I was born, and at least until the age of high school was raised. And it just has lots of parallels to Greensboro. You're talking about a grocery store in which this act of terrorism occurred, that I shopped at, my family shopped at, streets in which my father, who was a garbage man for a period of time, picked up trash. And when he was later a city bus driver, he drove those streets. And so to see the loss in that community, to know that it happens in an area that has parallels to areas in Greensboro, where it would otherwise be a food desert, but for that grocery store, and also recognize the trauma that those community members are going to have to experience going into that grocery store just to continue to access food. Obviously, my thoughts and prayers goes out to the entirety of that community, including my own family members who obviously are living in that community now and very closely affected by that. But, I hope everyone recognizes the significance of what happened there and how far we still have to go as a country. And both in terms of access to food and food deserts and the like, but also the eradication of racism and white supremacy, because it's literally a matter of life and death in so many ways.
Ms. Buswaiter?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There have been so many things go on since our last council meeting. Several of us were at the Cone Medical Center on Drawbridge Parkway. I know Mrs. Hoffman, Mrs. Thurm were there, the grand opening there. May 5th, Crime Stoppers had their annual golf tournament, raising money in order to have the rewards for Crime Stoppers. I had the honor of attending last Saturday, the Triad Math and Science Academy STEM into STEAM International Multicultural Festival. This academy, they've always been STEM oriented, and now they have called it STEAM because they've added the arts. They know how important the arts are to the communities. And these children, within 2 weeks while they were in the middle of exams, put on this fabulous international festival and play. And it was just absolutely amazing, everything that they did in order to pull this together right when they're in the middle of exams. So it was really heartwarming to see. And they actually have 53 different cultures in their school. So that was pretty amazing to see everything they did. Several of us were at the Sanctuary House celebration of 20 years. I know the mayor spoke. Mrs. Thurm was there. I can't recall if anyone else came to that. Let's see. And of course, we had the GMA Police Community Banquet last week where the mayor presented the chief with the Order of the Longleaf Pine. That was a very good banquet, as they have every single year. A lot of residents have done life-saving and prevented crime. And they get awards along with the police department employees and along with police officers. I wanted to say congratulations to Rodney Roberts. He is the he didn't expect that. He is the Chief Information Officer now for our IT department. Yes, thank you, Rodney. Well deserved. And of course, I know that Chief James is not here in the chambers, but this would be, I guess, his last city council meeting. And I think all of us have been going through how much we're going to miss him. So Godspeed, Chief, and don't be a stranger. So thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Mrs. Johnson?
I too went to the police banquet. It was a great banquet, and wanted to say to the mayor, it was a great and very caring gesture to give him the longleaf pine. I could look at his face and tell he was just touched. He was really touched.
Thank you.
And I want to give kudos to the Community Foundation. I attended their annual meeting. It was in the LaBauer Park, which is a great place to have a luncheon. And we're very fortunate in Greensboro because we have a lot of foundations here that really lift the quality of life in the city. And certainly the Community Foundation is one of them. So kudos to you, Walker, and the Community Foundation. And I have a new great-granddaughter. And thank you. She's had a little rough time, but she's gonna make it through because she's 9 pounds and she has fists like Muhammad Ali. Okay, that's it. Big fists.
Not gonna mess with her. No. Mr. Holston?
Yes, I have just a couple. Thank you, Madam Mayor. First is back on May 5th, the council members Hightower and Wells, we were at the Family Room Foster Care ribbon cutting. And that's a special organization that provides resources for those families that are either emergency placements or foster care placements. And it is absolutely outstanding if you walk in that room and see the expansion and see the available resources for the families who are in need, or they come back for the repeat business, so to speak, as the children age. It's a wonderful resource for our community, and so congratulations to them. On May 11th, I attended out at Revolution Mill, the Builders Vibe Community Night Out, where GCS, CTE, and Dr. Chillis provided the carpentry pathway building affordable housing. I was really excited to see, for instance, one of the groups there was Southern Guilford High School, and they're actually building a tiny house on their property. And one of the students who's a part of that program had a good conversation with him, and he's not interested in going to college. He knows what he wants to do. He has this carpentry skill, and he wants to get his certification and hang his shingle. And it's just exciting to see the different options that the kids have in schools nowadays. It's not always just the college option, but it's really what makes them happy and what they're really good at. Also want to talk about the Police and Community Annual Banquet, as others have mentioned. A wonderful banquet. I think Councilwoman Boulevard mentioned the different awards, and I want to highlight one of those awards. It was from one of the residents. His name is Dana Daughtry, and he was the recipient of the Citizenship Award for an effort that he did back on February 22nd. And in talking with Mr. Daughtry, listening to his story, listening to his history and his past, and he'll be the first one to tell you that he was standing on that stage and he got an award. He got a polo shirt, but he has a history with the Greensboro Police Department. It isn't one that he's necessarily proud of, but it's his history. And it was highly ironic that he received a polo shirt from the police officers as an award for what he did on February 22nd, when he had some difficulty with that same polo shirt in the past. Again, I'm not saying anything that he wouldn't tell you on his own, but it's just nice to see the growth in Mr. Daughtry and the growth of what he's doing for the community, for the Second Chance community. And I'm really excited for the future for what he's doing. Next, also, that very same night, the Mark's Angel Foundation had a celebration of the work that they've done over the past years. As Councilwoman Boulevard is very familiar with, Mark Friedman was the restaurateur in town who was senselessly murdered back on November 3rd of 2020. And they had a celebration there, remembering Mark, also remembering Basil Wilson, Jessica Brewer's son, who was also murdered just in September of last year. That group's come together. They've raised over $60,000 in the past year, giving it back to the community through Crime Stoppers, Out of the Garden Project, and some others. And so they're really doing good things, and very proud of what they've done. And then last but not least, and the 25th of May is National Missing Children's Day, and is dedicated to encouraging parents and caregivers to make child safety a priority. I know that Councilwoman Hightower and Mayor Pro Tem Johnson and I were, I'm not sure when it was now, time has kind of escaped me, but we were at Jones Park, at Echelon Pool Park, about National Missing Children. So it's just important. If you see something, if you know something, please say something and report to Crime Stoppers. And I believe, Madam Mayor, that completes.
Thank you.
My
Mrs.
list.
Austin?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out this past weekend, beginning on Thursday evening, was Greensboro Bound, our literary festival, free to all of our citizens in the city. And it grew out of our independent bookstore, Scuppernong. And the first Greensboro Bound weekend was 5 years ago. And then, of course, we missed out 2 years with COVID. But yeah, I'll tell you, it is amazing. On Thursday night, you at UNCG and Scuppernong partners with, I mean, it's a little organization. So you have to have big partners when you're a little organization to do good work. And so both A&T and UNCG are some of their partners. But at UNCG on Thursday night was the writer Amor Tolles. I mean, he has, his third novel is out now, The Lincoln Highway. But his first two novels, A Gentleman in Moscow, is on my all-time favorite list. But so he was at UNCG, and just a really fabulous evening on Thursday night. And then on Saturday night at A&T, Harrison Auditorium, we had Nicole Hannah-Jones, the 1619 Project. You know, this is a big deal. Most cities don't get two people like that in 3 days, plus all the others in between. There was a special program for Fred Chappell, on Sunday, our own poet laureate and, fabulous writer and poet. So, but with all of that, the other thing that Greensboro Bound does during the year is that last year they had they do a lot of work in the schools, introducing students to authors and writers and getting them interested in reading and letting them see that being a writer is a real career. It can be a career. It's something that they can aspire to. So there were 120,000 student author meetings in the Guilford County schools last year. And I think they donated over, I think, 5,000 books for students in the public schools. So, it just always amazes me, the things that we have and are able to do in Greensboro. I'm very proud.
Thank you. It was fun seeing a lot of people downtown yesterday with Greensboro Bound as well. There are lots of people. Yeah, the Blues Festival on Saturday was great. And then Sunday there was blues and food in Center City Park. Couple things. Obviously, there was an election last week. We have another one on July 26th. And I think it's important we get that date out because we're going to have 5 bonds on the referendum. That may be one of the most important things we can look at for our future. So I hope that as you're talking to people that you'll remind them to come out in July and especially support those bonds.
Don't forget the early voting dates.
Yeah, and I think that starts on like
July
the
7th through
7th.
the 23rd.
Okay, so much was said about the Order of the Longleaf Pine, and I want to say I really had very little to do with it. Sharon Bell, who is not here, had done an amazing amount of work coordinating everything that needed to be done. That normally takes 120 days, and I think we got it in less than 2 weeks. Former Mayor Jim Melvin wrote a letter, Crime Stoppers, the Police Foundation, our city manager, all in support. It was great. Sharon had to go borrow Yvonne's longleaf pine so we could figure out what kind of frame we needed because we weren't sure when it would come in. And the governor actually hand delivered it when he was here for a 911 event. So that was all pretty cool. The biggest decision was what color should we mat it? And I'm kind of partial to Carolina blue, but I thought the hell with them. I'm not gonna put his on the wall in Carolina blue in his new office. We wish him well, but we wish he stayed here. So the Paul McCartney concert was Saturday night. It was at the Wake Forest Baseball Stadium. It was sold and the event was managed by Coliseum staff, not the traffic, but the event was managed. And they sold 33,000 plus tickets, which is more than the football stadium actually seats. It seats about 31,500. That same night, there were 7 events going on at the Coliseum here in town, and there was an event in Tanger. So when we look at the Coliseum and all the great things they do, the way that they multitask really any day of the year, but especially how it was on last Saturday night. Hugh, I'm glad you mentioned Dana. I think he is one of our ambassadors downtown, and he really got a start getting hygiene packets together to hand out for those living without shelter. So he's really wonderful, all the stuff he does. One of the programs we found out about at the community awards dinner, which I had not heard of before, and I don't think anybody at our table had, was called Run Well. And it was started by a group of Greensboro police officers, and there's a fire department guy on it as well. And they reached out to youth in our community, and it's kind of a 3-legged approach. The first one is mentorship, but it's really deep mentorship, scholarship, make sure that they stay up on their grades, and fitness. And so there were probably a dozen young men who were part of that program, and they were on stage with police and fire, and they got a standing ovation for their partnership. And there are lots of great things going on in the police department and the fire department and other departments that we may not always hear about. I thought that I knew all the things that were going on in the police department, and I had never heard of Runwell before. And so I think it's wonderful that we have employees who are really thinking about what can they do. We have a big issue, crime and public safety, and they're working, how can we get kids off the street and maybe expose them to a different life. So I think that was great. And, you know, whatever we can do to help expand that program, if they need funding or time or whatever, but it was, I think it really could pay dividends. And let me see, there was a walk last Wednesday night. Mrs. Hightower and Mrs. Buzawader were there for Sincere Davis, the Mother Standing Against Gun Violence. The Greensboro Police Department, the women from the NAACP, community partners showed up to walk in the area where Sincere lived, and unfortunately where he died. He was a young Page High School student. Somebody knows what happened that night, and somebody's going to have to come forward, and they can do that through Crime Stoppers. So, and Mr. Outling, our heart goes out to you and Buffalo for that horrible, horrible shooting. Sometimes it's by the grace of God go I. We are, you know, we are lucky that we haven't had an event like that. Mayor Pro Tem and I were actually writing a letter of condolence to their mayor and their city council. So we, our heart breaks for them. You know, we do see things like that locally. We see it throughout the country, and we really have to get a handle on how we can work together better as a community. And again, we apologize for that horrible event that happened. And unfortunately, it is one in a long list. And it's a list that none of us want to be on. Mr. City Manager?
Thank you. Nothing for me.
Oh, Mr. City Attorney?
I have nothing either.
All right, can I have,
Mr. Deputy City Manager.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? All